Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I hope you guys had a great Christmas yesterday, and as it is now the day after Christmas, we're going to be going back to 2016 and taking a look at Shakin Stevens, and he's going to be performing Merry Christmas Everyone. And this is one of those songs that is always on the Christmas playlists here in the UK, one of the first songs you hear at Christmas. I'm sure that the playlists are regional in terms of which songs you hear the most, but this is a massive track that we all listen to here in the UK. But let's get Shakin Stevens up on screen and see how he gets on.
It's the season, hope and understanding. Merry Christmas, everyone. Time to party and celebration. People dancing all night long. Time for present and exchanging wishes. Time for singing Christmas songs.
I'm just going to jump in here. It's one of those songs that when you listen to the original recorded version, you might think it's going to be difficult to take it to the live stage because of the amount of production on that original, but we get a great sound here because everything that you want to hear is in there, including a few little guitar lead chops in there that aren't as prevalent on that original recording, but everything stuck together here is great. It is a tone lower than the original recording, so that's just going to be one of those things because Michael is not as young as he was, and it's going to be easier just to start at that lower pitch, considering as well we do have a key change, so we are going to be taking those vocals a little bit higher towards the end. Just to mention that there is a key change in that original recording as well, so here we're just a tone lower across the board. But Christmas hits and compositions that do well at Christmas is something that everyone wants to be able to write because it's a guaranteed royalty every year, and very few artists and bands manage to nail down a #1 hit at Christmas and one that's going to stand the test of time. So there seems to be this center where a lot of the Christmas hits are just played over and over and over again. Every year they always pop up, but then every artist is trying to write a hit that's going to make it into the center of this Christmas period and get on those playlists, whereas most of the time the compositions are just floating on the outside and they might be heard one year, but then they disappear. So what is the difference, and how would be the best way to write a Christmas hit? If there was a way of doing it and somebody had worked it out, I always say this about great songs and great songwriters, they will be the most in-demand people in the industry because nobody knows the formula. But the thing that we can learn from a lot of Christmas hits is that in order to appeal to the happy side, you have to have major chords, and that's certainly what we've got in this particular song. We've got a minor chord for only 2 beats of a bar, so we haven't even got one for a full bar. So it's going to feel positive, and that's exactly what you want with Christmas. When we have, say for example, Last Christmas by Wham, that's a great example of a Christmas song that leaves you with a different feeling to something positive, because it's exactly half major chords and half minor chords. That's one of those songs that I'm going to have to do a future analysis of, probably at Christmas, because it's the same 4 chords over and over again for over 4 minutes, and George Michael's vocal in that, but the melody of the vocal as well, is so interesting the whole time, considering there's only 4 chords being played the whole time. But it's interesting because it has a perfect mix of major chords and minor chords. And unlike this song, which is just dabbling with a minor chord for 2 beats of a bar, so you don't really notice it, as soon as they touch that minor chord in this composition, they're almost immediately away from that slightly sadder place of the sound of minor chords, and we're back into the major, back into the happy sound. So comparing compositions, for example, this one with Last Christmas, you can start to understand why you feel a certain way about a particular song and why it was written in the first place and pieced together in order to make you feel like that, because that was always the aim by the person that wrote the song. So, when we get into Last Christmas, I know that the original recording is in between keys in terms of trying to play along. It might have been something that happened when they converted the tape, the analog, to digital, and the tape maybe ran a little bit too fast or a little bit too slowly, and it's in between our keys. But if we're talking about standard tuning, with Last Christmas, we start on C sharp major. It's a happy chord, and then we go straight into a B flat minor. So, if we're taking the lyrics, let's look at that, because the first line is, "Last Christmas I gave you my heart," which is positive. It's a nice thing to say. The next line is a minor chord. It's a sad backing for, but the very next day you gave it away. So we've got the chord matching the lyrical content. Then we're going into another minor chord, E flat minor. Next year, to save me from tears, another hint of sadness there. The last chord is just an A flat major, a happy chord. I'll give it to someone special. So the great writing that is in there, we've got the positive lyrical content with the positive backing. So it reinforces the message of the music with the lyrical content, with George Michael, with what he's actually saying. So there's a lot of depth in there. Obviously, we're analyzing that, looking at it with a microscope in terms of bringing all of these things to the forefront as to why we feel how we do about that song. And when we're analyzing those chords, we're spending 2 bars on a major chord, 2 bars on a minor chord, 2 bars on a minor chord, 2 bars on a major chord. So we're just as sad as we are happy. So then when we look at Merry Christmas Everyone, we start on a major chord, we just touch on an F sharp minor for 2 beats of a bar, and then dive straight into a D, and then we go into an A, into an E, again, all major chords, and we do touch for 2 beats on that F sharp minor again, but then we go back to D and A and E, so that's all major bass. We're pretty much 90% major the whole way through the composition. So when there is that hint of a minor key, which makes you feel more sad, it is just touching on it for the interest, but then bringing you back to that major key, that uplifting sound. The other thing we've got is the intro with the bells, and we've got sleigh bells as well. That is a dead cert in any Christmas song. You've got to have sleigh bells in there running throughout the track. Also, having the tagline so early on in this song, because the verse at the end of what I'm calling the verse, but you could call it a chorus straight in, is Merry Christmas Everyone. So you'll hit with that straight away, and similar setup really in this song as Last Christmas, because the chord progression is just a repeat the whole time in the verse, and you can call it the chorus. Sometimes you might think that a hit is a hit because it took so much musical knowledge in order to piece that together, and there was such depth in there that it was like a scientific equation, piecing it together perfectly. But that is rarely the case. You'll find that most of the hits were written in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and it just got pieced together because it was just something melodic that came into the writer's mind at that time. And these Christmas hits are a great example of that. Just a simple chord progression, but with such melody in there that it is so memorable, you just can't get it out of your head once you've listened to it. Taking a simple chord progression like we've got here as the example, in order to make just a few chords interesting the whole time, you have to mix it up. Otherwise, people will just get used to it and they'll think, well, I've heard this chord progression already, so I'm bored of it. And what happens with this particular song is we have that intro that's got that bells riff in there that's memorable and it's nice, and we've got some harmony vocals that come in with the intro as well. We then get into what I'm calling the verse, but that has got the tagline of the song in it. We then get into a pre-chorus, which sounds like it's going into a chorus, but it doesn't. It goes back into a verse, and then we go into a solo section with the saxophone. So already we're really mixing things up. And then after the saxophone solo, we have some shooby-doos, which are just vocals. We go back into a verse, which is repeated like a chorus, but it isn't. And then we have a key change. And once you have the key change, it is like wiping the slate clean, because everything that you're now going to hear wasn't in the same key as everything that you've heard previously, so it will sound different, it will sound new. A solo section is always going to make a song more interesting because it's changing the point of focus. We've been listening to the voice of the lead singer, but now we get the voice of the lead instrument. And that's exactly what we have here with the saxophone. Because the voice has changed, we now don't notice that it's the same chords that we've been hearing the whole time before underneath the human voice. It's now the saxophone's voice that we're listening to. And when we get the lead voice of the bells in the intro and the outro, those are the two bookends that start our journey and end our journey. Just another thing, Shakin Stevens during this performance is saying hope and understanding, whereas the original recorded version is love and understanding. So this might be something that he's just changed for this performance, but let's get back into it.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas, everyone. Snow is falling all around me. Children playing, having fun. It's the season. Open understanding. Merry Christmas, everyone. Snow is falling all around me. Children playing, having fun. It's the season. Open understanding. Merry Christmas, everyone. Snow is falling all around me. Children playing, having fun. It's the season. Open understanding. Merry Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas, everyone.
And there we have it. Who else noticed right before we get into that key change, we have that bells melody coming in again, just breaking it up so that it's taking your attention and throwing you off the scent for that key change so that it is more dramatic. So a great live performance here. Shakin Stevens vocally spot on the whole way through, and the full band setup, literally with the strings in there as well. Everything that you want to hear on that original record is in this live performance. Just a word about the song, because it was originally recorded in 1984 and it was set for release that Christmas, but There was another song that was recorded that year called Do They Know It's Christmas, and that was a huge charity single where lots of artists got together. It was a huge #1 all across the world. I don't think it quite made it to #1 in the USA, but it certainly did pretty much everywhere in Europe. So that was a huge hit, and because they knew that that song was going to be released, Shakin Stevens and the record label held off for a year, so they just put this one on the back burner until 1985, and they released it that Christmas and had a massive hit with it. But thank you guys for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!